You need to be able to have people that you can lean on, but you also need to be able to admit that you are at a place where you need to talk it out. And if your head is down in the weeds and you're doing 10 other jobs and I just don't have time for anything, then you're working in the business. You're not working on it. Welcome to the Nice Business Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Train, business, leadership, and culture consultant, and Vistage CEO, peer advisory group chair. And I'm joined by my friend, Jim Bob Howard, veteran technical consultant. Together, we have more than 60 combined years of business and organizational experience. The purpose of this podcast is to have short but meaningful discussions about the people and culture side of business and how owners and executives can be both kind and successful. So for those of you who are just joining us, thank you very much. And I have to say that I'm really excited about this conversation because it's a little bit different of a format than what we've done so far. Jim Bob and I usually have conversations with people about a specific kind of topic, but he introduced me to Laurie Guzman, and I'm going to give you a chance, Laurie, to tell us a little bit about yourself. But in our preparation conversation, it was so organic and so great about a wide-ranging set of things having to do with business that I thought, it would be a great idea for us to just kind of get on and just the three of us talk about things that I think have to do with something that business owners and CEOs encounter on a regular basis, and it kind of gets away from them. That maybe this conversation might be able to help them recenter and think back about what's important, certainly for us, which is about the people side of business. So that kind of goes into some of what we were going to talk about. We're going to talk about people, we're going to talk about pivot, and we're going to talk about purpose. But before we go into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Laurie?
First, Richard, thank you for having me on your podcast. And Jim Bob, to reconnect with you after so many years. It's a perfect segue into the people, right? Yes. I mean, honored to call you friend for so many years, but I have been a business owner now for just over 10 years. Did I start as a business owner? Heck no. I was looking for a way to just support myself and my kids. And fortunately, I don't really have to tell the story too much anymore about single parenthood and the hardships and the struggles. I'm honored and blessed because my family and I say we're on the other side. The business I started, unbeknownst to me years ago, was really to support business owners that needed administrative support pre-COVID. So we were fancy. We were a virtual organization before the word virtual became cool. And then that administrative work morphed into walking beside powerhouses like you, Richard, and Jim Bob, that are serial entrepreneurs, passionate about serving others, generating opportunities that yield an ROI. So the inside story through the years, I grew up in it, became Laurie with a story, and then really known to be a natural connector. I'm exceptional at it. I'm passionate about it. So today, pivot, that word is really powerful in my life, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we were talking about was about the importance of people and being a people-focused business and business owner. And what tends to surprise me, and y'all chime in if you agree or not, but is we kind of grow up knowing the right way to be.
Yes.
Now, I don't care whether you're just whether you're more philosophical or whether you have a religious view or whatever, doesn't matter. You grow up knowing the right way to be, how to be a good person, do unto others and all of that. And yet so many people, especially when they get to higher levels in business or leadership, it amazes me how easy it is for them to kind of set that aside and do what is easy, which is not always what is nice. So and this is the Nice Business Podcast. This is all about being people focused. And they do it for expediency. They do it to get ahead. They do it for their own self-interests, which I find to be very short-sighted. Do y'all find that to be the case too?
Yeah. And I would say what I see more than anything is that you do start off doing what you do, start your business or buy your business or whatever you're doing because you want to serve people. And you want to work alongside people that want to serve the same kind of people that you want to serve. But at some point, you get to the point where now you've got to start expanding and you've got to start growing and start scaling up. And you start getting people in and maybe get some layers in your organization. And you, maybe for the first few years and even for the first few levels, you're still able to kind of know everybody. But at some point, you get to a point where you can't. You can't know everybody that's in your organization once it gets to a certain size. And then it's just too easy to look at them as the bottom line. And to say, this is a human resource cost. This is, what's it costing us to have this person on? And are they providing all of that value? Instead of looking at the person and really understanding that they've got hopes and dreams and desires just like you did when you started this. And maybe for them, they do want to start a business someday, or maybe they would like to work in a different way. But you lose sight of that. You don't get to connect with them as much as you did anymore. And then it makes it really easy to just kind of circle the wagons and talk to the folks that are really close to you with not really understanding how does everything that you do really impact the rest of the people that are part of your organization or in your clientele.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Jim Bob, everything you said, I totally appreciate, have experienced, have walked alongside the leadership that you have to remind and say, by the way, that 83 people we're talking about are people that once upon a time you didn't have that team. But there's another side to it too, as the organization grows, then all of a sudden the leadership becomes a bit isolated and separated because now, you're connected to human beings and they want you to feel for them. They want you to experience what they're experiencing. And there's these opportunities where you can't always take Mary Jane's perspective into consideration, even though it's valid, but there's 52 other people you need to consider now. Right. And there's the expenses and the ability to there's a lot of families depending on this organization now.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there as a leader going, wow, now I can't be buddies with my team members anymore. And I have to start answering these questions from a more methodical business owner standpoint. And that's not always so comfortable for people like myself that are emotionally driven and connected to humans and need to be connected.
True. And don't you think that as a business scales, as a Vistage chair and as a coach, what I've found is that you get business owners or CEOs, if they have a board, that they start speaking to the board as opposed to speaking to their teams. And so it's a different kind of language. And I don't remember exactly when this started, but in the last 20 years or so, the conversation went to, we make data-driven decisions, which is all great. Jim Bob, you're a tech guy.
I mean, if you've got the data, you need
but there are people on the other side of that data too.
Yes.
And so I tend to think that gets a little bit lost in the conversation at times. And it's the people that bring you to the dance. And ultimately, that needs to be considered at the same time because it's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and that gets lost, I think, at times and needs to be focused on. And I mean, Laurie, I know that you consult as well. In my experience, I've seen managers kind of lose sight of that. And when they have gone back to that and tried to get behind what their people are doing, it tends to create a resurgence in interest and morale. But I've also seen when it hasn't. Have you experienced that at times too?
I think one of the biggest things that is a true reality today at all levels, middle management, your C-suite, your director level, your owner, your CEO, is decision-making fatigue. I think we're so connected. Let's talk technology. I mean, if we don't respond to a text, an email, a phone call, an in-person meeting, whatever it is, in 5 minutes or less, and I don't think I'm exaggerating on that, there's accountability being already tallied, right? And so just what you're saying, the managers, I mean, an exceptional manager is one that really knows how to be present when they're in a conversation, how they're balancing that work-life balance is just, I think it's a little cliche today. I think it's just about being able to know how much is enough for you and being able to balance it in a healthy way. The three of us could all, I think we all come to the table with three different levels of work-life balance and what we're willing to sacrifice, what we're willing not to. So I do think from a manager's level, I think what I see the most is leadership gets to people's heads. They start to recognize like, wow, I got a little authority here. I got some power. I'm making some decisions. Maybe they're a little fatigued. They don't know how to balance things. And then they start to drive from a more authoritative position than the, let's look at this from all angles.
Yeah.
That's one thing that is really important, is looking at it from the viewpoint of the people for whom you lead. But probably one of the biggest components to that is communication.
Yes.
And the issue that I find now is, and maybe it's because I'm a Gen Xer and I'm a little older, and so and maybe it's the same thing that my parents had to deal with when my age was coming up. I don't know, but I do see a difference in how to communicate, and it's different from every different age. You can't talk to somebody who is a Gen Xer the same way that you can talk to a millennial, the same way that you can talk to, everybody's different. And so what are your thoughts on how to best communicate regardless of who you're talking to?
Jim Bob, you are so exceptional at communication. I can still remember examples of you in crucial conversations, and you know how to do it with a real level of sensitivity. You got to speak to this, please.
I think the important thing with communication is understanding what it is you're trying to communicate and who you're trying to communicate with. Richard, to your point, different generations are going to communicate and receive communication in different ways. The other side of that too is like, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the conversation about? And that's pivotal for really what you're communicating about. And so if we're trying to get to a certain goal and certain things need to happen, we need to communicate. That's what we need to do. And that's what we need to work towards. But the other side of that is listening to what it is that may be keeping us from getting there. Because the last thing I ever want to do is just continue the beatings until morale improves. And that's where you get a lot of times when you have a goal that you want to get to and you try to communicate what that is. And like, okay, everybody, here's where we're going. And you got a couple of people that are on the boat or on the train or whatever your metaphor is. They're like, I'm not sure that that's the right goal. Or we could do that, except that we don't have any wheels on the bus, or we don't have whatever the situation is. And if you're not listening to them and you're thinking, hey, we're just going to go. And they're like, okay, but this thing doesn't roll. We're never going to make it there. And you have to be able to listen to them. And I think that's the other key part of communication too, is that it's not just about trying to communicate your vision. You're also trying to communicate with them the things that they need to know, and give them the opportunity to communicate with you the things that they know about the situation as well too. And I think the biggest part of both of those, that it comes down to being transparent with your people and just across the board, and then also building trust with them by being transparent. And so that trust and transparency is key to anything that goes on with communication. In fact, if you start communication and there is no trust, you're not going to get anywhere. So if you realize that at the beginning of the conversation that these people don't trust me, that's where you have to start.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Laurie, thoughts on that?
Tell me what kind of relationship where communication and trust isn't prevalent first and foremost. Right. Pick something. Yeah. And then I think the hardest thing is to recognize when the trust isn't there and that you're still in a stage of earning it, or maybe there's an opportunity there where you're not sure whether it goes back to the people. You may not, if you don't trust your team, you don't trust the leaders that are working for you, or they don't trust you. How do you move anything forward?
True. There are two components to those conversations that I think are pivotal that people need to learn. And I am guilty of that myself, is one of the things that I have had to overcome. And I struggle with this every day because I'm an extrovert. And that is, my gut reaction is to listen for the purpose of being able to respond as opposed to be able to understand.
Yes.
And I know that that is my own personal failing and that I have to overcome that. And what makes it worse is this comes from being fairly self-aware at an advanced age.
22.
And that is, and that is that I try to make sure that when I'm more comfortable with people, those barriers don't drop and that self-awareness doesn't drop and I start jumping all over them, which is a problem for me, especially if I'm managing them. I have to always remember to listen and to understand, and then be able to do something that I really had to learn. And this is not really a magic bullet in communication, but it's a real helpful tool, is rather than start offering up my opinion, is to start asking questions.
Yes.
Get really good at asking good questions, because you can lead people to where you want to be, regardless of their generation, by asking questions. They'll answer you in a different way because of their life experience. But if you can get really good at asking good, solid questions, open-ended questions, not the yes or no's, but how do you feel about this? Or I'll give you an example. We've got an issue that we have to get to X deliverable by X date. This is where we are. What are your thoughts on how we can best go about it? And that way you're inviting them into the conversation without saying, your team is screwing up and you're not getting there. And I'm really upset and I'm disappointed in the way that you're working. You don't have to do any of that.
Yeah. Well, because the truth is that if they have any sort of self-awareness themselves, they're already upset with themselves for being in a situation where they're not meeting a deadline or not meeting a specific goal as well. I think that's always the key point, is like, okay, we can't start from 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago or 2 years ago. We have to start from today. Now, we still have, if the goal can't move, then we have to talk about, well, what is it that we accomplish between now and then, and what's going to keep us from doing that, so that we can work towards mitigating whatever is keeping us from it. But it does come down to, again, trusting your people. And I think that's, to be honest, in work, most of my career, I've been an individual contributor. I've led teams and managed people a handful of times. Most of the time I've been an individual contributor. But what I've seen a lot of people do is they go through all this process of hiring people that are fabulous. Like, they're the great people. You know, we looked at all the resumes, we took the cream of the crop, we hired the person that was the best for it. And then we get them in there, and then we don't treat them like the genius that we hired them to be.
Oh, yes.
Right? So when we don't trust their genius, or we think, well, they've got a lot to unlearn, or they don't know the way we do things, or whatever, who cares? Mm-hmm. You hired them into that role to be a genius. Help them be a genius and stay in their genius as much as possible. Now, you may ask a question like, does anybody have ideas how we can get from A to B, and what's keeping us from there? And they may go, I don't know. I don't really see a way that we can get there. And here are all the obstacles. Okay, well, let's talk about the obstacles, right? But still, if you start off and say, get there, right? Figure out how to get there, or this is how you should get there. You're not really taking into consideration the fact that you hired them to do things that you weren't doing. I mean, why would you hire somebody to do something and then tell them exactly how they're supposed to do it? Why didn't you just do it?
Absolutely. Richard, if you don't mind me jumping in there for...
Right, absolutely.
Jim Bob, you just hit upon something that I have seen over and over, or have experienced personally, right? Mm-hmm. They bring you in, they say, wow, perfect fit. This is what we need to have happen. Or you're the person that brings the skill sets or appears to be that heavy hitter, right? And then the other part happens, which is figure it out. How often the organization just turns to the person and says, we're paying you so well. We've hired you for your expertise. Yeah. You're supposed to be so amazing. It's not my problem anymore. Now it's in your hands. We're 2 weeks in. What did you do for me today? And you've forgotten that the person new to the organization should have an opportunity to observe. It needs to be treated as a newcomer. And that the expectations, how often I see it's not clearly defined. Like,
Right.
how quickly do you expect the goals to be hit? Oh, tomorrow? And you're behind by 27% for the last 5 years. But in the next 30 days, you expect this new director of so-and-so to produce. It's so unrealistic. Being able to put a new person in position to thrive, to your point, have autonomy, to rise to the occasion, to bring a voice, to bring changes, but also to be properly supported, like somebody coming into your family. I mean, do you open the door, invite someone in your house and say, good luck, make your own dinner, have a nice day, and you go take a nap? If you do, you might not have a lot of friends. We need to work on it. But, right? It's,
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, I mean, when you bring somebody in to do a job and you don't like what they're doing, and now I'm going to be speaking about this from the manager or the C-suite person perspective, and that person is always running around a million miles an hour with their hair on fire because it's just easier for me to do it because they're not doing it the way I want it.
yes.
So you're doing 10 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a micromanager, right? But they feel like they have no choice because nobody's doing it to their specifications. That's why you get executive burnout. That's why it's very hard for middle managers to get beyond middle management because they're not given the tools to get to where they need to be, and they don't understand delegation and let people make their mistakes when you can, so they can learn too.
Yeah.
And they're not building their bench behind them.
Right.
Absolutely. Or they're micromanaging, they're burnt out, and now they've got, their solution is to be disconnected. Now they're absent. They're not present. They're showing up in the office one day a week because that's all they can handle anymore. And,
Or they're showing up and they're being a jerk.
yes. Now, right. Now we're using the good old, and I've done it, right? Being a bully or being just difficult to work with because you've started to become narrow-minded because you just don't think the results are ever going to show up. And you're arriving to conversations with an expectation of negativity.
You know what? I think that's kind of a good segue, Laurie, to that next point, which is pivot.
I think so.
Why don't you take us through that?
Okay. Pivoting. So we all remember the year 2020 by chance, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So let me not be silly about it because we know how difficult of a year it was for everyone in the world, right?
Yes.
But it did bring, respectfully, it brought so many opportunities. It moved us, and I really love this word, it pivoted so many of us to start to show up differently in our personal lives, how we work, where we work, when we work, who we work with. Opportunities were birthed to virtual schooling, to virtual full-time jobs, right? And working from home was not a difficult sell anymore. I can tell you, up until 2020, I spent so much time engaging with new clients in the first conversation discussing what it's like to work with someone who's not in your office. What is it like to work with a remote worker or a virtual person? And it goes back to trust and communication. So pivoting, I really think 2020, I was calling it leading up to that year, the year of perfect vision, 2020. And so be careful what you wish for, because it really woke me up. But
it was eye-opening, yeah.
It was. And that was the year for me where pivoting came into my life, where I started to, a lot of the things we just discussed, burnout, just feeling like just reinventing the wheel. Many people came to work in my organization, really came in as if they were coming for a degree. We were a training ground. They became exceptional at working virtually. They grew their confidence, developed new skill sets, honed in on skill sets they already had. And next thing you know, we were birthing new businesses. I can't tell you how many women left working for me to go start their own business.
Yeah.
Right? So
Fantastic.
Pivoting, at the end of 2020, I just started saying, what do I want? What do I need? How can I start to show up in my life from a more loving, compassionate, energy-driven, I want to be me. I want to be the best me. And pivoting is, I think, the most powerful thing a business owner can do proactively rather than reactive. Because by the time I was learning what pivoting was all about, which really just means changing course, opening up to new opportunities, looking at something with a new set of eyes, letting go of what's not working, take on what is working, and you pivot. It's this buoy, in the water. It's a really great compass that says you have permission to change. What do you want to do? I love the word. I just didn't know a lot about it until there was a lot of difficulty that I was facing in my own company and in my personal life, where I didn't have the same grueling demands that obligated me to stay in the model that I was running at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
How would you recommend? So you were kind of forced to pivot, or at least you got to a point where like, I've got to pivot or I'm going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
What recommendation would you have for folks that are like, hey, things seem to be going pretty well. Why should I be looking at pivoting now? When's the right time to be considering a pivot? And then how do you go about that?
I think the one thing I wish I did differently is that I wish I had a Richard in my court from the first year I owned a business.
Right.
I tell everyone who's about to start a business, a great mentor told me you need an accountant, an attorney, and a business owner who's failed terribly and owned 2 super successful businesses. Get those 3 people in your court sooner than later. But the other big part, at least I think after a year, I think new business owners need some time to be a toddler, figure things out. I think pivoting, that conversation's too premature early on, but having a coach, by the time you really say, I'm a business owner and I want to move forward, I want to grow a team, especially if you're going to be more than a solopreneur, that you need to know pivoting, and you got to have a coach early on. And you need a coach who literally pivot. They can tell you 14 million examples of what that looks like. Yeah. And what does that mean? People pivoting, all of it.
Well, and I'll throw another P word in there as peer group. And look, clearly I'm partial to Vistage because I think Vistage is one of the best organizations for peers of at your level out there. But get one. There are others too. So it's not the only one, but it's what I like. And you need to find something that is a fit for you. Mm-hmm. So getting a coach that's a fit for you, getting a peer group that's a fit for you, somebody that you can bounce those ideas off of to help talk through things. If you can't go to your board, because that's why we hired you. It's kind of like what you were saying before, Jim, is, we hired you for that. You figured it out. But you can't go to the people who answer to you because they have a vested interest in telling you what they think you want to hear. But if you can talk to people who are not your competitors, not your bosses, and not the people who answer to you, and really just kind of flesh out these ideas. I have an opportunity to buy out my competitor to do X, Y, Z, or to take on a new product line, or I've got an issue with somebody in my C-suite that I'm not really sure how to handle, whatever. You need to be able to have people that you can lean on, but you also need to be able to admit that you are at a place where you need to talk it out.
Absolutely.
And if your head's down in the weeds and you're doing 10 other jobs and I just don't have time for anything, then you're working in the business. You're not working on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
and that's another pivot point, right? Because if you're starting a business and you are a solopreneur and you do want to grow a team, it's not always because you don't want to do the work anymore. It's like you still want to do the work, but at some point you get to the point where you do have to work more on the business than working in the business. Right. And how do you know when to make that pivot and how do you make it?
Yep. And that kind of goes to what Laurie is saying about getting yourself a good coach, get somebody that you can talk to.
I remember the first few years, I was afraid to tell people what I was struggling with. That imposter syndrome, all of those things that speak to us and keep us up late at night, that being able to, Jim Bob, you influenced us, if you remember this, years ago when it came to LinkedIn. Having people around you, when you start to sense that you can trust someone and a client, I've done so much of the opposite through the years, and I find it valuable. You can go to your client and you can say, what could we do differently? How do you see this? What would you like to see my team doing that we're not doing? Or, why do you love what we're doing? It's not just, here's a survey, fill out the feedback, but it's truly like, is there anything that you're hesitating to talk to me about from a support position? And vice versa. Hey, Jim Bob, we work for you, or Richard, you're a client and I work for you, but here's some of the struggles we face behind the scenes. Do you have any thoughts? And my God, that opened doors to resources, tighter relationships. It just built such camaraderie. And then it solved problems. It created solutions. It was powerful. And then one other area was I really did go to my competition as often as I could. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Because first of all, I really believe this. If you are my competitor and you do what I do, you provide the products or services, whatever that might be. If we are really competitors, I want to know you because I hope you care about delivering exceptional results, great product, great services the way I do. And if you do, that means there's probably great opportunity for us to find synergy.
I agree with you. I will tell you that when it comes to getting to know your competitors, I agree with you. I think that's important. The reason why I said really, because not everybody does that.
No.
As a matter of fact, most people don't. If they are your competitors, then most people tend to think of that as, oh, they're the enemy.
Right.
They're not the enemy. They're just doing something that you do. And in most industries, unless you are providing one thing to a small town or a small region or whatever, and there are one or two other people doing the same thing, for the most part, there's plenty of business to go around.
Or what about the client who the chemistry's not there, right? It's not working, or the price point isn't a fit, or we don't have the skill sets to take it to the level that someone else does. I mean, it's linking arms and finding those collaborations. And I have found competition. I mean, it's really been a unique approach that I did with a lot of our clients, construction industry, accounting, legal services, you name it. And they would say, what do you mean you're going to reach out to the people that they do exactly what we do, Laurie? And I'd say, great. I want to get to know them. There's no laws, I mean, other than we're copywriting their contracts or doing something unethical, which is not the point. But it's that if you're doing something and you're doing it so well, I want to learn from you. And
there's that. But what happens if there's something that happens within your industry that affects all of you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Don't you want to have a relationship with those who are doing what you're doing, and maybe you can find common cause?
And to go back to COVID, I can't believe I'm bringing it up this year again because we all want to put it to bed. But overnight, in 30 days, 4 full-time employees, right, working virtual managers in my organization became full-time teachers. I lost my core team in less than 4 weeks because they had to be home and they had to tutor their little people. And there's no way. And their internet capacity half the time was a bigger challenge than anything. But with that, it was imperative. There was clients, people panicking. How do I use Zoom? How do I have a work from home? What kind of equipment do I buy? How do I protect the VPNs and all the fancy technology things that had to come into play? Thank God for competitors and relationships that I had, because these organizations that had bigger teams that were working internationally, there was whatever it was, or they had tools that I couldn't afford to implement immediately, or I didn't have the people and the ability to pivot and support. And there were people calling on me, help me, Laurie, help me. What do we do? I mean, what are we going to do? Panic was stricken in these organizations that did not want virtual or remote workers and so forth. So having those relationships with organizations that operated differently, that were straight up competitors to me, was phenomenal because I could direct people to call these people. I'll do an intro email. I'll get us on a conference call. They have the resources. They've got the tools. We don't specialize in that. these 4 companies do. I mean, my team was getting compensated for doing nothing other than putting the fire out and the panic out for probably 90 days following March in 2020, just to put people at ease. Like, don't worry, it's super easy. I was one of the people, 3 weeks into COVID, I was still going out in person. I couldn't imagine an extrovert times 10. I was crying at week 3, like, what if we have to do this permanently? I'm gonna kill myself because I have to stay home with myself,
Yeah.
So, but
you had to learn how to pivot.
Yes.
And as do we all. And that's really the important thing, is to figure that out. And when you do know more people, including your competitors, you have more examples of pivoting.
Yeah. You know how many times competitors sent me new business? Do you know how many competitors picked up a phone or would send an email and say, Laurie and her team can help you? And people would be like, I can't believe they sent that to you. And I'm like, because it doesn't fit their model.
Yeah.
Because I made a friend, because I've sent them 4 opportunities as well. I didn't do it with the give and take and an expectation. It was build the circle of influence, build the people around you so that you can't fail.
Yeah.
So that actually leads. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's been a hallmark of my friendship with you, Laurie, is that you and I, in every situation that we've been in, have been, how can I provide value to whoever I'm talking to? Is there somebody you need to meet? Is there an organization that you need? Is your current provider for something not the right fit for you? Is there somebody else? And I'm not trying to take business away from somebody else. I'm trying to help both of you be in a situation where it's a win for everybody.
It's a match.
Yeah, exactly. You really kind of play that glue and that connector piece within every organization that you touch. Is like, I'm going to go talk to the competition. I mean, like, they're not the competition. They're somebody else that's in the same space that we are, that does something similar to what we do. Maybe they do it for a larger type of clientele. Maybe they do it for a different industry. It doesn't really matter. Maybe they've got bandwidth and we don't, or maybe we've got bandwidth and they don't. I mean,
maybe it's a personality difference where they might get along with that client better.
Exactly. Yes. And that at the end of the day, that's a tide that rises all boats. And so when you do end up in a situation where the whole world has to pivot, then you're in a place to say, hey, here's somebody who can help you. Here's somebody who can help you. And here's where you can go to do that. And it's because at the base of it is that your purpose is that you're going to help people. That's always been who you are.
Well,
Jim Bob, that was probably the best segue right there, because both of you were just talking about led us to purpose.
Yeah.
What you just said.
Yes.
And that's the last of the P words that we were talking about, is people pivot in purpose. You got to understand your purpose. Why are we here? Jim Bob, we've had this conversation before in other podcasts where we talked about, if you don't know your why, and I know that sounds so cliche, and everybody talks about what's your why and all that stuff, and it sounds like jargon, and it has gotten to be that way. But it's basically, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about, why are you here on this earth, or I'm doing this for my kids. I'm not talking about anything esoteric or personal. I'm talking about from a business perspective. What are we doing? Yeah. What is our job? And in our space, this is kind of our company policy and how we go about doing things. And Laurie, to your point before about, with your competitors, is if you're able to refer somebody, a client, to somebody else because you think that they're a better fit with them, not only does your competitor appreciate you, and they're going to reciprocate because you know your purpose. And what happens is even that potential client that you sent somewhere else is going to remember you too, because they understand your purpose too.
Yes. Because you were saying cliche, people say, I want to help people. What do you do for a living? I help people. Let's hope everybody thinks that way. Right. I mean, it's really, I think we should all start our day that way and say, today, how am I going to help someone else? The golden rule, right?
Yeah.
And but it's digging into, I was just sitting in a class recently and the teacher was talking about the word why. And what you were just saying, Richard, just why do you coach? And answer that question. And then she kept continuing. Every time you would finish a sentence, she'd say, and why? And tell me more. And why? And why would you say that? And why would you not do this? And then along comes that powerful word, 3 letters, why. Can I tell you why? Do I understand my why? Do I have a why? Does it matter? So it's really the purpose. The beautiful part about what I know now on the latter part of my career, I'm not ready to sign it to call it a day. I just think I'm really ready to step into a chapter where it is all about purpose.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain it anymore. I don't have to say, I help people. No, through just the way I communicate, how I stand, how I walk, how I talk, where I spend my time, the people I'm around. I think and the world would like me to be a little quieter once in a while. I know you two probably.
I value every word you've ever said to me.
No,
Laurie, people tell me that all the time.
Yes. But you know what? I really learned to embrace, you said it earlier, Richard, it's about listening. Boy, I mean, in this past year, if somebody was watching this whole episode, they'd be like, Laurie, you're lying. You do not listen. But I really am. I've gotten so good at being able to sit and lean in and go, say nothing and see what happens. Just let them continue. Don't interrupt. Do not start thinking about your response. And I'm telling myself, shush, just sit. Just be with, Richard is explaining, he's passionate about something, or he's full of crap. Let him just keep going, and just let him start to recognize that your silence is a lot more powerful than what you have to say. And my purpose has become, let someone else be heard. That is really a huge part of, it's like an epiphany that I'm finding myself daily going, my purpose today is really to make sure that somebody else's story, what they need, what they don't need, who they are, whatever, that they're being listened to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely.
And going back to the different types of people that you're speaking with, if you're listening to them, doesn't matter what age they are. They want to be heard.
Yeah. That's it. And the younger they are, I find, and it's a challenge. I mean, I like an email that starts with, hi, Laurie, how are you? Rather than what's up and a question mark. And I'm going to just say there's some generations that think that's professional, right? Or they text you when, they want a raise and they're texting you. When do I get more money? I mean, I come from a generation where that's not appropriate. But yeah, the audience, the younger they are, I think the shorter their communication through technology is because they don't feel comfortable to communicate in any other fashion.
True.
Email and texting.
You got to meet them where they are too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to back up a little bit, that's one of those pivot things that we've had to do, realizing we've come from a time where the phone was attached to the wall. And so you could only take calls if you could get to the wall, or you could stretch that cord, to a closet someplace to have a private conversation.
Yes.
To where we never get away from them ever. Like in the house, we're always there. When we're out, it's always with us. We're in the car. It doesn't matter. We're always connected to our phone. And that's part of what you're saying earlier about, the technology is like, I sent you a text. Why haven't you responded yet? It's been 5 minutes. I'm like, I set my phone down. What?
Yes.
But that's our generation where we've learned that it's okay to set it down. But our younger generations coming up behind us, they don't remember a time when they didn't have a phone.
They've never disconnected.
And so they've always communicated that way. And that's not to their detriment necessarily. I mean, it's not their fault. It's just that we just have to realize that sometimes when you go to communicate with someone who has always had a smartphone with them, they're going to communicate in a different way. Sometimes they're not comfortable face to face. Sometimes they're not comfortable on a phone call, but you get them in text and you can do that. Then you just have to be careful to realize, I can't always read tonality in what you're saying. Whereas if I can look in your eyes, if I can hear the inflection in your voice, I know what that means. You probably can communicate well with emojis. And I'm like, I don't understand what that's supposed to connote, right? I mean, was that you raising your voice? Was that you being excited about it? Your exclamation point, were you mad or were you excited? I don't know, because I can't tell by looking at your face. I don't get the nonverbal cues like we all grew up with. And so that's one of those other pivots. So we have to, like, how do we listen to people when we're not really listening to them? We're reading their texts.
Well, and from a kind of to bring this full circle. So from the from the perspective of a business owner or a leader of some sort, CEO, president, what have you, middle manager, I don't care. What it comes down to is thinking about your people from the standpoint of you have to take into consideration not only your own perspective, but theirs as well. Yeah. Meet them where they are. Be ready to pivot to a way that is going to be effective, even if that means rising up to the 50,000 foot view, taking a step back and thinking about it. Whether you ask them to pivot or not really depends on the situation. And you're going to have to always keep the overall purpose in mind so that you have a guidepost of how to get there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Very much so.
Well, this has been great, y'all. I appreciate you spending the time, Laurie. This is an even better conversation than the one we had prior to this.
Well,
so
I'm honored. This was just such a pleasure. It's really good. The opportunity to, Jim Bob makes a connection, and coming into that call with no expectations is just, it's wonderful. It's refreshing. And I'm excited to see where you go with this, gentlemen. So
me too, but all roads lead to Jim Bob, right?
I know. Are you Kevin Bacon's cousin or?
My Bacon number's 2, so I'm one removed from him. So
that's it.
I mean, that's a dated reference.
Doesn't he Richard? Doesn't he kind of remind you of a Kevin Bacon? Can't you just see him? He's got that whole personality. He's got the swag. The whole thing. He's
pretty footloose. Anyway, all right, y'all. Well, thank you very much, Laurie. Thank you, Jim Bob. This has been a great conversation, and I hope that our viewers and listeners have gotten something out of it, and they can always reach out if they have any other questions. Awesome. And we'll put contact information in the comments.
Awesome. Thanks, you, guys. Richard.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Nice Business Podcast. We hope you got some valuable information and inspiration. We're always looking for great stories that will help your business be more kind and successful. And if you know of one we should hear or someone that would be a great interview, please let us know. To contact me, click the link here to go to my website or use this QR code. I wish you a nice business.